If you're thinking about writing your NED CV or cover letter, then you might find it helpful to hear tips from Claire Howe. Claire is an executive director at B3 Living. She has the experience of receiving applications for their board vacancies over the last few years, some of which we've advertised on dynamic boards. So, Claire, I would love to hear, what are your tips?
Thank you, Sarah. The first thing to do is to really match yourself to the role. So you need to think about, why are you going for this role? Why is it a fit for you? Does the organisation's values align with your own? So you really need to think that through. And that's the most important thing to put in your covering letter, because people are looking for somebody who really wants to come and work for you. If you haven't spelled that out, then I think you're putting yourself at already at a disadvantage, and that will help set you out from others as well. So really think that through in your head and put them into words on the paper why you want to work for this organisation and why you think it's a fit. You really need to be reading carefully what people are asking you to do as part of the application. So often there is a really clear ask, whether it's to write a covering letter of 2 to 3 pages, whether it's to answer a series of questions. You'd be really amazed at the amount of people who just send in a short covering letter and haven't actually looked at what they need to do. So really take the time to think through, what are they asking for? How can you evidence it? So don't write too little, don't write too much, but actually just really cover what are they asking for. Make it really easy for the person that's shortlisting to identify that in your statement. It makes you much easier to be shortlisted if you've made it really clear in your covering letter that you've evidenced what they're looking for at this stage in the application process. The third one, I think, is actually to really bring out actual examples of what you've done. I mean, you want to save some for the interview, of course, but if you can draw out some key examples of the evidence, the skills that they're looking for, then this really brings your application to life. You haven't got much room to play with, but if you can just evidence your experience in particular area with an example, it makes it much more likely that you will be assessed and kind of move through to the next stage, because you've got tangible examples of what you've done to demonstrate a particular skill set. So bring it to life with examples. It makes it a much more enjoyable read. It makes it more lively, more engaging, and it will draw out your experience in a much better way.
And what are the biggest mistakes that people sometimes make on their CVs and cover letters when they're making applications?
The absolute worst is leaving the name of another organisation in your application. You know, we all recycle our applications. If you've written one elsewhere, pull it out, have a look, see what you can reuse. But however, make sure you have tailored it for this role and make sure you have given it a really proper proofread. Get somebody else to proofread it. I'm really quite surprised sometimes people just send in their CV in a really brief covering letter, because you've really missed a trick there. You're not putting yourself at the front of the queue in terms of evidencing your skills. It doesn't look like you've put much effort in, to be fair. I would say you've got to put the effort in order to be successful at this very first stage. You can't assume that your CV will speak for itself. A third one, I think, is not tailoring your CV. So often I'll read an application letter and then I look at the CV, and what's in the letter doesn't actually match up to the CV at all. So it is about tailoring don't put your exec CV in for a non-exec role, for example. You've really got to tailor it and put the evidence they're looking at towards the top. So make sure you have tailored your CV for the role that you're applying for. I would always say, try and put in a call to the recruiter or the contact and just try and find out a bit more about the organisation. And that way you can tailor your CV. I think people know to do that who've been applying for a few roles, but actually just take that extra step and get yourself out there. Now, there is a fourth one, and I don't know whether this is something that is just me or not. I don't always respond well to applications that write "Dear Sirs" at the top. So for me, that kind of assumes that all of the people that are going to be reading the letters are men, and that's not the case. And I don't apply any bias to that, but I would just say that it's not something that you kind of respond well to when you're reading a letter that's addressed to "Dear Sirs." When you're writing a letter, just, I know it sounds like an obvious one, but people rule themselves out of these roles because they don't think they've got all the experience. And I think it's really important that you don't put any barriers on yourself. So you might think, oh, I can only do 60% of this, so I'm not going to apply for it. But actually, some people are thinking, well, I can do 50% of it, so I am definitely going to apply for it. So, there's so many barriers. Don't rule yourself out, and make sure you put yourself through to the next stage if you can. I would also say that it's important to evidence broader skills and not just the skill set that you're being recruited for, because there's only a finite amount of space on the board. We will be looking for people who've got a broader skill set as well as their specialism. So it's really important to include that and evidence that as well. Definitely get feedback. So many people don't get feedback, and I'm always really surprised by this, but it just helps you to tailor it for next time and to improve and keep it on improving until you get that first role.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you, Sarah.
And if you are watching this video and you're about to pull together a CV or a cover letter, I hope you found those tips from Claire really helpful. If you haven't already, please do sign up to Dynamic Boards. We list all the non-exec roles and some trustee roles from across the UK, and it's totally free to sign up and view our roles. We'd love to have you. Good luck with your applications.